I could feel his eyes on me from across the crowded lodge, and when our gazes finally met through the flickering firelight, something electric passed between us. The warmth spreading through my chest had nothing to do with the mulled wine in my hands. He was tall, confident, with that easy mountain charm that made my pulse quicken. When he started walking toward me, weaving through the other skiers with deliberate intent, I knew this wasn't going to be just another quiet evening by the fire. Mind if I join you? His voice was deeper than I'd expected, with just enough roughness to make me shiver. Before I could answer, he was settling into the chair beside me, close enough that I caught the scent of pine and something distinctly masculine. I'm Lincoln. The way he said his name, slow and deliberate, made it sound like a promise. Brianna, I managed, suddenly very aware of how the firelight was dancing across his features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes seemed to hold secrets I wanted to discover. Enjoyed the start? Hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what caught your attention. So, Brianna, he said, leaning back in his chair like he had all the time in the world, what brings a woman like you to a place like this all alone? There was something in the way he asked it, not judgmental, just genuinely curious, that made me want to tell him everything. Sometimes you need to get away, I said, taking another sip of wine to steady myself. Find yourself somewhere new. His smile was slow, knowing. And have you? Found yourself? I looked at him then, really looked, and felt something shift inside me. I think I'm about to. The conversation flowed like the wine, easy and warming. He told me about the mountains, about runs I should try, about hidden spots where the snow was perfect and untouched. But underneath it all was something else. A current of attraction that made every casual touch, his hand brushing mine when he reached for his drink, his fingers grazing my wrist when he gestured, feel charged with possibility. You ski tomorrow? He asked as the lodge began to empty around us. Planning on it? Good. I know a trail that'll take your breath away. His eyes met mine. If you're interested in that sort of thing. My heart was racing, and not from the altitude. What kind of thing? Adventure. Something you've never experienced before. He stood then, extending his hand. My room's upstairs. Better view of the mountains. Want to see? I knew what he was really asking. We both did. And as I placed my hand in his, feeling the calluses from years of gripping ski poles, feeling the strength in his fingers as they closed around mine, I knew my answer. The elevator ride felt endless and instantaneous all at once. He stood close, enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could see the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. When the doors opened, he led me down a hallway that seemed to stretch forever, his hand never leaving mine. His room was exactly what I'd expected. Rustic elegance, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-covered peaks, a fireplace already crackling with warmth. But I barely had time to take it in before he was turning me toward him, his hand settling on my waist with a confidence that made my knees weak. You're beautiful, he said simply, and the way he said it, like it was just a fact, like he was commenting on the color of the sky, made heat pool low in my stomach. Lincoln, I started, but he silenced me with a finger against my lips. Just let me look at you for a moment, he murmured. Let me remember this. His hands moved to my jacket, slowly working the zipper down. I should have felt nervous, should have hesitated, but there was something about his steady presence, the way he moved with such careful intention, that made me feel safe even as my pulse pounded with anticipation. The jacket fell away, then my sweater, each piece of clothing removed with the same deliberate care. When he stepped back to look at me, his eyes dark with appreciation, I felt more beautiful than I ever had in my life. Perfect, he breathed, and then his mouth was on mine. The kiss was everything I'd hoped and more, deep, consuming, full of promise. His hands roamed my back, my sides, learning the shape of me while I lost myself in the taste of him, the feel of his lips moving against mine with increasing urgency. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Are you sure about this? Instead of answering with words, I reached for the hem of his sweater, pulling it up and over his head. The firelight played across his chest, highlighting muscles earned from years on the slopes, and I couldn't resist running my hands over the warm skin, feeling him shudder under my touch. He lifted me then, carrying me to the bed with an ease that made me feel delicate and cherished. The sheets were cool against my back, but his body was warm as he settled beside me, his hands continuing their exploration with reverent attention. You feel incredible, he whispered against my throat, his lips tracing a path along my collarbone that made me arch beneath him, so soft, so responsive. His mouth moved lower, finding sensitive spots that made me gasp, made my fingers tangle in his hair. He took his time, building the tension between us with patient skill until I was trembling with need. Please, I whispered, not even sure what I was asking for, only knowing that I needed more of him, needed to feel connected to him in every way possible. He understood. He always seemed to understand, reading my body like he'd been studying it for years instead of minutes. When he settled between my thighs, when I felt the first pressure of him against me, my breath caught. Breathe, he murmured, his voice strained with his own need. Just breathe and let me in. I did, feeling him fill me slowly, completely, until we were joined in the most intimate way possible. For a moment, neither of us moved, just savored the connection, the feeling of being so perfectly matched. Then he began to move, setting a rhythm that was both gentle and demanding, responding to every sound I made, every shift of my body beneath his. It was like he could read my mind, could anticipate exactly what I needed before I knew it myself. That's it, he encouraged as I moved with him, our bodies finding a perfect synchronization. Just like that. You're incredible. The praise sent heat spiraling through me, made me bolder, made me meet his movements with increasing confidence. We were lost in each other, in the rhythm we created together, in the building intensity that seemed to consume everything else. When he shifted the angle, hitting a spot that made stars burst behind my closed eyelids, I cried out, my nails digging into his shoulders. Found it, he said with satisfaction, and then he was moving with renewed purpose, driving me higher and higher until I was balanced on the edge of something explosive. Lincoln, I gasped, his name a prayer on my lips. I've got you, he promised, his own voice rough with strain. Let go, I've got you, and I did. The climax crashed over me in waves, stealing my breath, making my body arch and tremble beneath his. Through it all, he held me, moved with me, drawing out every sensation until I was completely spent. He followed moments later, his release ringing, a deep groan from his throat as he buried his face in my neck, his body shuddering against mine. Afterward, we lay tangled together, our breathing slowly returning to normal. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my skin while I listened to the steady beat of his heart beneath my cheek. I started, then trailed off, not sure how to put it into words. Yeah, he agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. It was. We dozed for a while, wrapped in each other's warmth. When I woke, it was to the feeling of his hands on me again, his mouth placing soft kisses along my shoulder. Again? I asked. Turning in his arms, his answer was in his eyes, dark with renewed desire. If you want. This time was different, slower, more exploratory. He mapped every inch of my body with his hands and mouth, finding places that made me gasp and shiver, learning exactly how to touch me to drive me wild. I reciprocated, taking my time to explore the planes and angles of his body, to discover what made him groan, what made his breath catch. It was intoxicating, this power we had over each other, this ability to reduce each other to pure sensation with just a touch. When he pulled me on top of him, guiding me into position with gentle hands, I felt a thrill of control mixed with vulnerability. From this angle, I could see every expression that crossed his face as I moved above him, could watch the way his eyes darkened with pleasure, the way his jaw clenched when I found a rhythm that drove him to the edge. Beautiful, he breathed, his hands gripping my hips. So beautiful like this. I leaned down to kiss him, feeling him deeper inside me with the movement, both of us moaning at the sensation. We moved together like we'd been doing this for years, each knowing instinctively how to bring the other maximum pleasure. The firelight painted everything in golden hues, made the moment feel dreamlike, unreal. But the feel of him beneath me, inside me, the sound of his breathing, the warmth of his skin, that was all too real, too perfect. When the tension became too much to bear, when we were both trembling on the precipice, he rolled us over, taking control with a gentleness that made my heart race. His movements became more urgent, more demanding, and I met him eagerly, wanting to give him everything he was giving me. This time we reached the peak together, calling out each other's names as we shattered and reformed in each other's arms. The intensity of it left us both shaking, clinging to each other as if we were afraid the moment might disappear. Stay, he whispered against my hair as we settled into the aftermath. Stay the night. I should have said no. I should have gathered my clothes and returned to my own room, maintained some distance, but the way he held me, the genuine warmth in his voice, made it impossible to refuse. Okay, I whispered back, and felt him smile against my temple. We talked, quietly as the fire burned lower, sharing stories about our lives, our dreams, our fears. There was something magical about the intimacy of it, not just the physical connection we'd shared, but this emotional openness that felt just as profound. When we made love again in the early hours of the morning, it was with a tenderness that brought tears to my eyes. Every touch was reverent, every kiss a promise, every movement a declaration of something neither of us was ready to name. As dawn began to creep through the windows, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold, I knew I had to leave. This perfect bubble we'd created couldn't last forever, and maybe it was better that way. Better to preserve it as something beautiful and untainted. I dressed quietly, trying not to wake him, but as I reached for the door handle, his voice stopped. Me, Brianna. I turned to find him sitting up in bed, hair tousled, eyes soft with sleep, and something else I didn't dare identify. This wasn't just one night for me, he said simply. I hope you know that. My heart clenched, but I forced myself to smile. I know. For me either. Then don't disappear completely. Give me your number. Let me take you to breakfast. For a moment, I wavered. The sensible part of me knew this was vacation magic, that real life would intrude soon enough. But the part of me that was still glowing from his touch, still drunk on the connection we'd shared, wanted to say yes. I fly out this afternoon, I said instead, which wasn't exactly an answer, but wasn't a rejection either. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Then come find me before you leave. One more coffee together. Promise me that. I promise, I said, and meant it. I slipped out then, making my way back to my own room as the lodge slowly came to life around me. In the elevator, I caught sight of my reflection and saw a woman transformed, hair wild, lips swollen from kisses, eyes bright with satisfaction and possibility. Back in my room, I packed mechanically, my mind replaying every moment of the night before. I could still feel the imprint of his hands on my skin, could still taste him on my lips. Part of me wanted to run straight back to his room, to forget about flights and responsibilities and real life. But another part of me, the part that had learned to protect itself over the years, whispered that some things were meant to be perfect and temporary. That trying to extend this magic beyond the mountains might only diminish it. I was still debating when there was a knock at my door. My heart jumped, thinking it might be Lincoln, but when I opened it, a hotel employee stood there, with a folded piece of paper. From Mr. Harrison in room 312, he said with a knowing smile. Inside, in handwriting that was bold and confident like the man himself, Lincoln had written, "Thank you for the most incredible night of my life. Whatever happens next, know that you've changed something in me. Coffee at 10 in the lobby? I'll wait for you either way." I looked at the clock. 9:45. My flight wasn't until 3, but I'd planned to leave for the airport early, to put distance between myself and the temptation he represented. Instead, I found myself touching up my makeup, running a brush through my hair, checking my reflection one more time. When I stepped off the elevator at exactly 10, he was there waiting, 2 cups of coffee in his hands, and that smile that had started everything. "You came," he said, and the relief in his voice made my chest tight. I promised. We found a quiet corner away from the bustle of checkout, settling into overstuffed chairs that felt impossibly intimate after the night we'd shared. For a while, we just looked at each other, both of us probably remembering the same moments, the same sensations. "Any regrets?" he asked finally. "None," I said immediately, and realized it was true. "You?" "Only that it has to end." We talked for an hour, the conversation flowing as easily as it had the night before. He told me about his life here in the mountains, his work as a ski instructor, his plans for the upcoming season. I shared stories about my job, my travels, my restless need to keep moving. "Maybe that's what you need," he said at one point, "someone to give you a reason to stay still for a while." The comment hung between us, loaded with possibility and invitation. I wanted to ask if he was volunteering, wanted to explore what it might mean to build something real with this man who had shown me pleasure I didn't even know was possible. But my phone buzzed with a text about my shuttle to the airport, and reality came crashing back. "I have to go," I said reluctantly. He walked me to the lobby entrance, both of us dragging out every step. When we reached the doors, he turned to face me, his hands coming up to frame my face with gentle reverence. "This isn't goodbye," he said, firmly. "This is until next time." Then he kissed me, right there in front of everyone, a kiss that was soft and sweet and full of promise. When we broke apart, I was breathing hard, fighting the urge to forget about flights and responsibilities. "Altogether, go," he said, stepping back with obvious effort, "before I do something crazy like ask you to move here." I laughed despite the tears threatening at the corners of my eyes. "Maybe next time ask me before I get to the airport." His smile was brilliant, hopeful. "Is that a yes to next time?" Instead of answering, I kissed him once more, quick and fierce, then grabbed my bags and headed for the shuttle before I could change my mind. As the van pulled away from the lodge, I looked back to see him still standing in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching until we disappeared around the bend. The image burned itself into my memory alongside all the others from our perfect night together. The flight home was a blur of conflicted emotions. Part of me felt like I was making a mistake, walking away from something that could have been extraordinary. But another part of me was grateful for the experience exactly as it was. Perfect, untainted by the complications that real life would inevitably bring. It wasn't until I was back in my own apartment, unpacking clothes that still smelled faintly of pine and wood smoke, that I found the second note tucked into my jacket pocket. This one was shorter. "When you're ready to stop running, I'll be here." Along with it was his business card, and on the back a phone number written in that same confident script. I stood there for a long time, holding the card, remembering the feel of his hands, the sound of his voice when he said my name, the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious and rare. Maybe someday I'd call. Maybe someday I'd be ready for the kind of life he was offering, the kind of connection we'd shared. But for now, I tucked the card carefully into my jewelry box, next to other treasures I couldn't bear to throw away but wasn't ready to use. Some nights, when I'm feeling restless and unsatisfied, I take out that card and remember what it felt like to be seen, to be wanted, to be touched with such reverent attention. I remember the mountains and the firelight and the way he made me feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. And maybe, just maybe, one of these days I'll find the courage to pick up the phone. What would you have done? Would you have stayed? Or would you have walked away like I did? Have you ever had a connection so intense it scared you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one and I want to know. Before you go, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Turn on notifications, because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.